Thanks for all those insights, Alex. We're going to keep this train running, guys. We've got Kenny Lee, the co-founder and COO of Manta Network, to give a lightning talk. The title of his presentation will be The Global View on On-Chain Privacy for DeFi. Kenny, take it away.
All right, thank you. I'm trying to enable my video. Okay, perfect, awesome. So thank you very much, Dylan, for that introduction. I am here to talk about privacy, on-chain privacy, its current issues, and a little bit about Manta Network and how we're trying to solve those issues, specifically within the Polkadot ecosystem and even beyond. So for those of you guys that don't know what Manta Network is, we are building privacy for Web3, and we're using zero knowledge proofs to generate that privacy. We are an L1 chain, and we have a Kusama network, Canary Net called Calamari, which is currently launched, and we will be going for our parachain on Manta Network pretty soon. But without further ado, right? So privacy, it is a really big issue right now, on I guess both on chain and off chain, right? Because in Web 2 you have problems such as Cambridge Analytica, right, which was probably one of the larger recent privacy scandals in the space of in the tech space, right, where Cambridge Analytica got a hold of Facebook data, started exploiting said Facebook data for its own sort of purposes, and the world wasn't very happy about that. When it comes to on-chain data, though, right, blockchain data, you don't have something like a Facebook or a Google centralizing and encrypting that data to protect against unauthorized parties. Everything on chain is fully public, right? So I can see, as soon as I know what your wallet address is, I can see the NFTs you own, I can see the transactions you've made, the assets you're bullish on, the assets you're bearish on, right? And basically build out a Web3 identity for you. And if you can imagine, we're only at the beginning stages. And so as the Web3 ecosystem continues to evolve, the problem of privacy is only going to get bigger and bigger. The more applications you start interacting with on chain, the more of an online profile I can build of you. And eventually I can use that data to do whatever I want. And I don't have your consent at all. Right. And so eventually what we get to is this point of surveillance, monitoring that completely defeats the whole purpose of privacy, which is, I believe, a true fundamental human right. And this problem, despite the fact that there's all these awesome DeFi and NFT and metaverse projects coming out, is pervasive. And so, although people don't really think too much about privacy itself on chain, it is a really big underlying problem. And so we actually did a study back in around I think 2021 is when we published this, and we surveyed around 400, 500 different respondents in the space. These are like degens, traders, investors, basically everyone you can think of in the crypto space. And although privacy itself wasn't directly mentioned in the survey, we asked questions around it to get an understanding of exactly how people actually felt about it. And it really is a big problem. So these are some of the stats here, right? 73%, so almost 3 out of 4 respondents said that they've either hesitated or just avoided making a transaction altogether because of their concerns about privacy, right? And so a really good analogy of this right now is with Twitter. For those of you that use Twitter, you see that, Twitter recently announced, hey, you start using your NFT as your profile picture. And so if you click yes to that, then the next thing they'll ask you is, okay, can we verify your NFT based on your wallet address? Sure, that sounds innocent, right? But at the same time, once you give them your wallet address that holds that NFT, you give them access to link to your identity, which also sees all the other NFTs you own, everything that you've sold, bought, all your transaction history, your net worth on that wallet address, right? You give them indirect access to all this data that then can be used for or against you in the future, right? For better or for worse. But the whole point is that, there's no privacy. When you give them the wallet address, they see everything, right? And so this is the exact problem of that 73% that makes people hesitant about making particular transactions. At the same time, 9 out of 10 people have expressed that same concern that I just kind of outlined with the Twitter example, where they are concerned about their wallet address being actually linked to their identity. right? And this isn't necessarily for nefarious purposes. This is just for your own personal privacy, right? If I know someone that I viewed their wallet address and I see they own, you know, $50 million worth of assets, maybe I'd look at them differently, right? And maybe they don't want me to look at them differently. And then finally, right, also almost 9 out of 10 of us, I'm really sure that this statistic is probably higher and some people just don't admit it. But we've all looked at other people's wallet addresses, right? Like you receive a transaction from someone and you're just like, get a little curious and you look at their wallet address and you see what they have, what they do, how degen they are, et cetera, et cetera. Again, that feels like a very innocent thing to do, especially in the Web3 space. But at the same time, right, that the implications of that is definitely more profound on the privacy side. And so, what is Manta Network doing, and how are we kind of fitting into that? Right. So Manta Network, as I mentioned, we're building a layer one privacy network as a parachain. We've been doing this for about a year and a half now. So since that time, right, we've gotten a lot of great investors along the way. We've joined a lot of amazing programs to help catalyze our growth, not just on the development side, but also on the partnerships and ecosystem side as well. And so, as you can imagine, right, like building this sort of network is not exactly as simple as it seems, especially because there's a lot of scalability issues in zero knowledge proof these days. So we definitely need all the help we can get. A little bit about us, right? So our whole team is pretty decentralized, like most Web3 projects. A lot of us are in North America. There's a few of us in Europe and a few of us in Asia. Total team around 20 plus people right now. The founders on the very right hand side, you'll see me. My name is Kenny. I'm one of the founders of Manta Network. This picture on the screen is actually when I had long hair and I could really slick it back and tie it up. Prior to building Manta Network, I met the team. I met Shuma and Victor when I was pursuing my MBA at MIT Sloan. There, I was the blockchain teaching assistant, or the teaching assistant for all the blockchain courses. And prior to that, I've just been an entrepreneur for most of my life. My first company was in the cloud computing space. I did infrastructure performance analytics for cloud servers. And that's actually where I got into Bitcoin mining, which led me down into a bigger rabbit hole of, just cryptocurrency and blockchain in general. And I think that's also one of the realizations I had during that journey about just just how much of a lack of privacy there is in Web3. Victor, he was studying for his master's in economics at Harvard at the time, and he had registered for some courses at MIT, specifically blockchain courses. So, I was his TA, and he previously was an investor in this space for a while. And then Shuma, he was working at Algorand at the time. For those of you that don't know, Algorand is a spin out of MIT, built by the legendary cryptographer Silvio Micali. And so Shuma was in the Cambridge area as well. And so that's where we all met. But, I say we're building a privacy layer one. What does that actually mean, right? So it means three different things, which we're laying out in separate chapters of how we're developing Manta Network. The first one is MantoPay. And in Calamari, we equivalently call it MariPay. So MantoPay and MariPay is exactly what it sounds like. It's a payment system, a private payment system. You can think of it like Zcash or Monero, except instead of using one cryptocurrency, you're able to transact in various tokens. And so this is where the power of parachains and Polkadot come in, and Kusama, right? So through XEM, cross-chain messaging, right, we're able to wrap or privatize and wrap various tokens from other parachains into Manta Network so that those tokens can be transacted privately as well. For those of you that have been following our news, that recently we've done testnet XEM transactions with Moonbeam, and we're really excited to be able to bring privacy not just to Moonbeam's tokens on Moonriver, but also all of the ERC20 compatible assets, which are now XC20 compatible assets as well. And so we've been doing a lot of work on the XCM front so that when we launch MariPay on Calamari, then users won't just be privatizing KMA assets or KSM assets, but also a lot of assets from other parachains as well. So that's the first chapter. MantaSwap is what we're building as well on the side, and MantaSwap is kind of an evolution of MantoPay, right? MantoPay, you take one token, you send it to someone else. It's the same token. MantoSwap is exactly what it sounds like. It's a swap with privacy preservation functionality. And so now I can take, Manta token and swap it into Moonbeam's Glimmer, right? Or except, on Kusama, it'd be KMA to Moonriver, right? Mover. And so vice versa. And, it expanded into other parachain projects and other assets as well, KSM, et cetera. And then finally, we're also working on what we call Manta Platform. Manta Platform is something that we've actually been working on very under the radar for the past several months. And the research has gone on way longer than that. The whole premise of Manta Platform is the idea that, okay, in order to truly build out a privacy system that is scalable, usable, and adoptable, you have to bring privacy to the user. You can't ask the user to come to you for privacy, right? Like people just don't care enough for privacy to be like, oh, I'm going to go out of my way to go do all this other stuff just to privatize my tokens and then, transact, right? That's a good first step. But ideally, the user should be able to just leverage privacy directly on the application. And that's exactly what we're building with Manta Platform, right? We're bringing the privacy functionality that we have already built out with Manta Network to the application layer, to the wallet layer. And so people can privatize assets directly through their wallets. People can privatize assets directly through the applications they're interacting with, right? You're on an NFT marketplace. Now you can have the same thing, but with privacy, a private NFT marketplace, private on-chain voting, private DeFi lending, right? Like every application that users are already familiar with and interacting with, now they can have that added benefit of privacy. And that's what Manta Platform is. And I'll go into a little bit more detail there. But without going into too much detail on the payment side, right? Like the methodology for how we're building the privacy layer is really straightforward. You have parachain assets, you move the parachain assets onto Manta Network through XCM. Manta Network can wrap those parachain assets into private parachain assets. Then you transfer to whomever you want, right? And then someone else coming out the other side can unwrap for the original public asset. Now, one of the things that I really want to point out here that is really unique to what we've built out is that we're using a UTXO model for private transfer rather than an account-based model. And so for those of you that don't know what like a UTXO is, right, I'm not going to give you a whole lecture on it, but the value here is that it's not like you're just reaching into a black box and then pulling out 10 tokens that, like, let's say, for example, I have 10 tokens. I move it into Manta Network. I privatize those 10 tokens. And then like, I don't know, 30 days, 60 days later, I pull out 10 private tokens and publicly or transfer them back into public tokens, right? In an account-based model, I'm just like potentially pulling out random tokens that weren't the ones that I put in. So yes, they're the same 10 private Manta, for example, or it is a value of 10 private Manta, but it may not be my exact 10 private Manta. And I know this is a very fine distinguishment, but like the nuance here is that maybe you're pulling 10 private Manta from some place that you didn't want to pull from. Maybe these 10 private Manta were actually put in by, some country that's sanctioned by other countries. And then all of a sudden you're mixing, your money with other people's money. But with a UTXO model, it's guaranteed that the money you put in is still the money you take out. So even if I'm transferring between two parties, right, I know that that party's money is actually that party's money. And so, it keeps the whole transaction clean. And so that's why we decided to, use a UTXO model among a lot of other privacy benefits using UTXO over an account-based model. But like I said, getting into a lot of details here, the point is that we are using a UTXO model, and that UTXO model brings a lot of tremendous benefits to our privacy layer. So MantoPay is our first product. We've gotten a lot of success here already. And through that, right, like we're working to empower the ecosystem, as I mentioned, through the privatization of other parachain assets. And then we've done a lot over the past year and a half. But the idea here essentially is that Our team, we're small, but we're nimble and we're working really hard. And we're trying to bring privacy payment to the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystem as quickly as possible. We've launched the first version of our testnet approximately, say in like Q3. And that version of the testnet, we've gotten over 60,000 transactions just on testnet alone. And this is not an incentivized testnet. It's not like people were coming so that they can earn tokens or an airdrop, right? So V1 of our testnet was not incentivized. We got over 60,000 transactions across 6,000 unique wallet addresses, which shows that there's a really strong interest from the community on exactly what we're building out. A little bit of alpha for those of you not in the Manta community. Version 2 of our testnet, which is going to be launching in the next few days, that is actually going to be an incentivized testnet. So stay tuned for that. But upcoming, right, we've got launch of our testnet version 2. We call it version 2 because there are significant upgrades to what we've already built out, right? So zero knowledge proofs, they're very computationally intensive. And so what I mean by that is that it takes your computer a really long time and a lot of processing power in order to generate a zero knowledge proof. And so the first version of our testnet, it took approximately like 15 to 30 seconds in order to generate a ZKP, zero knowledge proof for short. But with version 2, we've actually optimized the ZKP generation performance to around 2 to 10 seconds. So that's a significant improvement. And so that's what we're launching with version 2 as well. And it comes with a lot of other features also. But just in the interest of time, I'll keep it short there. Once we launch version 2 and get enough testing on the way, we'll be working on launching MariPay on Calamari as well, so that we have private transacting on Kusama. And this is going to be where we start really leveraging the XCM and bringing in other parachain projects so that we can privatize those assets. Manta Network, we don't have a parachain yet. We are going for a parachain. We just want to make sure that our Kusama network is fully operational, and we can make sure that the private payment system is ready to launch on Manta Network. And then we'll hit for a parachain on Manta and then deploy MantoPay. Simultaneously, right, like XCM with top parachain projects, as I mentioned. And finally, launching the Poseidon testnet, P0x. So Poseidon, that's what we codename Manta 3.0, which is our Turing complete layer where applications can deploy and leverage our programmatic privacy directly from the network. And so as an application, because this is an EVM equivalent environment, what this means is that anyone that has deployed on other EVM equivalent environments, Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, etc., can deploy on us as well with little to no code change and be able to leverage all the privacy preservation functionality that we built with Manta Network. So we can shield sender address, receiver address, token ID, token amount. And all of this can be programmatically added into the decentralized application. So I can build an application and say, I want to shield sender address, or I want to shield sender address and receiver address, but keep the amount transparent. Or I just want to shield everything, right? All of this is programmatically available through Manta Network for decentralized applications that are EVM compatible. And so we'll be launching a testnet this year as well. So stay tuned for that. Poseidon, right? As I mentioned, Manta 3.0. We've the MantoPay, the privacy circuits, all the ZKP generation is UTXO based, and EVM layer is an account-based model. And so that's kind of like a different system of like the Web3 accounting. But long story short, we've built a consolidation layer between the EVM and the privacy layer so that the tokens can interact with the privacy layer and keep the contract separate in its own independent EVM equivalent environment. And by doing that, that's what lets the applications deploy with little to no code change, but still allow the tokens to interact and leverage all that privacy preservation functionality we've already built out. So with the last few minutes, right, I just wanted to open the floor up and answer maybe one or two questions. But at the same time, right, for those of you that don't really know about us, join us, follow us on socials, right? Twitter is at Manta Network or at Calamari Network for our Kusama Net. Telegram is at Manta Network Official. And yeah, for those of you looking for careers, we're hiring both on the engineering as well as the business side. So just go to manta.network/careers. So yeah, thank you guys. And I'll be taking some questions now.
Kenny, just a heads up. It looks like we're supposed to start the next session in 2 minutes, but
Yeah.
one of the questions that the audience is asking is when do you forecast your ops on Kasuma will be G to G to support another Polkadot CL bid? And I think it's probably all we're gonna have time for.
When do you forecast your ops on Kusama to will be G to G? Sorry, I'm not sure what G to G is.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Well, the other question is how ready for the market is the ZKP generation in WASM?
Oh, that's such a good question. Okay, so I'm going to try to answer this in 2 minutes. So that's a really good question because the WASM is so for those of you that are interacting with our testnet right now, you have to use what we call or refer to as a desktop signer. You have to download the desktop application to generate the ZKP locally, and this local generation is what makes the ZKP really fast, right? And so the alternative is what this person referred to WASM, which allows you to generate the ZKP in the actual browser. And so that means that you don't have to actually download any sort of desktop application. And so the reason why we did this in the first place for version 1 is because the desktop application for ZKP generation, again, takes around 15 to 30 seconds, depending on your processor, right? But if we were to deploy it directly on WASM, it would have taken like 2 to 4 minutes, right? I mean, imagine waiting 2 to 4 minutes on a browser just to get a zero knowledge proof generation, right? And so for user experience purposes for V1, we built out the desktop signer. Now, with the second version, and I realize we're out of time now, but just a quick comment, right? With the second version of the testnet, we've been able to improve the signer performance, the ZKP generation to, as I mentioned, 2 to 10 seconds. And that improvement translates into WASM as well. And so what we're working on right now is a WASM deployment of the ZKP so that the signer becomes optional. In fact, our intention is to remove the signer from the equation in the future so that people can directly generate the zero knowledge proof in the application. And without leaking too much alpha, right? Like we're also working on direct ZKP generation through the wallet. So yeah, that's kind of to answer your WASM question and go a little bit further.
Thank you, Kenny. It looks like we're out of time, but thanks for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.